everybody, to episode 5 of the Association Marketing Show. I'm your host, Ebites, the CMO here at Feathr, and today I'm joined by Paul Kissin, the Director of Marketing and Web Technology at the National Confectioners Association. Paul, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Big fan of Feathr.
I love that. I'm a big fan of you and your work at NCA, and I'm looking forward to talking more about that here today. So before jumping into some detailed questions, can you tell me a little bit about your personal and professional background, maybe how you got into the association world, and then what you're doing today at NCA?
Sure. And actually, I think throughout this podcast, I'll probably talk about this a little bit, but I think NCA is a little bit of a unique situation in the association world in that we've gone through a transformation over like the last 5 years or so with a new president. And as part of that, I think that they were open to some inspiration from worlds outside of the association. And my background really isn't in association life, but actually, a varied background that starts with a general interest in web design, which is really beginning like middle school and high school. I was, just like taken by the world of computers. And that's really kind of the foundation of my professional life. Between landing in NCA and the association world, I spent a little time in Japan. Actually got an opportunity to work for a general contractor who worked with a lot of associations, developing like web technology projects, websites, developing email, things like that. I actually ended up at NCA. I found them on Indeed. I think I had just a mixture of attributes that they were looking for. They invited me in and we really just hit it off. The National Confectioners Association, also known as NCA, is the largest trade association for the U.S. candy industry. We're kind of in a unique position, I think, in that like we don't really have a lot of other associations that do what we do for the U.S. candy industry. We are a member company level association, so we don't have individuals who are members, we have companies who are members. And so some of the familiar names are like Mars and Hershey, and then also like maybe some of the less familiar names, but still very prominent people like Godiva or Jelly Belly, right? So our role, what the association is doing right now mostly, and this has shifted a lot in the last 5 years, is we are really focused on being the communication and representation of the entire industry to really every audience, consumers, the Hill, but then also within the industry itself, and trying to like work together to build coherent strategy and long-term direction.
And so what does your scope look like today?
So we're not a huge association. We have about 30 employees. I think it's right around the size where like really everybody's pitching in all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that size on down, everybody's pitching in to do everything.
Right.
And so like my scope is pretty broad, I think. I'm on site at events, talking to members, interviewing them for communication and marketing material, but really everything, I guess, is like my marketing role is concerned and like my web management role is concerned. My big responsibilities are to continue to oversee like general tactics for really all of our marketing, the day-to-day, making sure that that the information about what the association is doing is coming into the marketing team, organizing it, and then delegating. And then basically in general, overseeing like broad strategy for what we do in like the medium term and long term. And then my other huge role, which I think is where Feathr primarily plays a role for us, is the marketing of our signature event, one of our primary events, the Sweets and Snacks Expo, which is one of the larger candy and snack trade events in the country.
Yeah, and we're happy to have been working with you guys for at least 3 years at this point. I think it might have been actually all the way back since 2016 is the first version of the event that we worked with you for.
Yeah, our predecessor brought you on, and I'm so thankful. You guys immediately helped me transition, did a lot to help sort of realize some of my vision for what marketing should be. The digital component is something that you guys make very accessible.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier was kind of Feathr helping you realize some of your vision for what you wanted marketing to look like at NCA. And maybe you could talk about that more, not necessarily the Feathr specific component, but like what is and was kind of your vision for what like a high quality marketing department, marketing function looked like for your association?
I think initially, just like most people, when I first got to NCA, I wanted to make my own sort of vision of where things went. I want to make my imprint on how we approach marketing. And so I think that at least initially, like I was totally absorbed in, what everybody was talking about, which was personalization. Mm-hmm. And I think it helped me dive into the world of what was possible. And so I think, look, there was a structure that was in place whenever I first got to NCA, and I wanted to build and move it in different directions. So I guess like what happened initially, and part of it was kind of like impressed upon me, because when I came into marketing the show specifically, my predecessor had actually already mapped out the plan for the year. And so actually a lot of my available budget was already occupied. So what I ended up doing was I knew that with the finite amount I had to kind of create my own path, I needed to find really efficient tools. And I already saw in my own personal consumption that I was making decisions based on things that I was seeing online. And what I also knew was that like a lot of marketers in the association space weren't investing in digital that much. So like I felt like there was like this wide open channel that was perfect for me at the time, which was like was cheap and it was available. And so I think that like I guess, and part of I think what you're trying to get me to talk about a little bit is, I mean, how did I make that transition? Where do I start? To some extent, my web background gives me an advantage, right? Yeah. And I'm fairly comfortable with computers. I think that like I've just been very curious about what this world looks like, and so it's led me to explore a lot of what's out there.
The Association Marketing Show is brought to you by Feathr, the all-in-one digital marketing toolkit built just for associations. To learn more about our tools and services, check us out at feathr.co. That's FEATHR.co. Would you say that you're like the percentage of your marketing budget invested in digital versus traditional for promoting all of your programs and your key events has like year over year linearly gone more and more digital over the last 3-4 years?
Definitely. Yeah. And I actually, we have a deliberate plan that we're executing over the course of years to move, I think, even further in that direction than we are currently. Yeah. Coming up with a percentage, I say that right now we're probably 70 digital to 30 traditional. Yeah. I think that actually probably this year we're even a little bit exaggerated just because of like the uniqueness of everybody being online right now. Right. I think one of the things we're going to discuss going into next year is that we'll probably want to continue to, well, I think we probably will actually go back in the direction of traditional just a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I feel like people are going to be a little bit burned out on digital, to be honest with you. But yes. Yeah. The general shift is definitely in the direction of digital.
70-30 is more than what I typically hear. I think that's more than the average.
Well, it's cool. I mean, I know for us still, and I think for a lot of associations, they're very dependent on email marketing. Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like in some ways that's like a halfway in between digital and traditional, right. In a way. I think that with email, and why I feel like something like Feathr is such a good alternative to accomplishing the same thing, is that email has been used as a reminder tool for a long time. I feel like right. It's we have to email you once a week so you continue to think about us.
But it's not very good for that, right?
It's not. It really isn't. And finally, when everybody uses it for that, the whole thing becomes without without value.
Yeah.
So for us, all these other digital platforms have, including Feathr, have really acted as like the constant drumbeat of like, don't forget about me, right?
It's much
And
better for that reminder, stay in the loop layer of communication that everyone needs, right? And like that's especially when there's time-based things that you're marketing around, like events, whether they're virtual or they're, in person in the future, or it's a webinar, or it's, some kind of membership registration deadline for a special or something like associations have a lot of time-based marketing initiatives, right? Just in general.
yep,
And especially for things like that, that reminder layer of communication is super important and typically gets more and more important as you get closer and closer to the date of the thing that you're marketing.
yep,
But if all you have for sending reminders is marketing emails, right? Is emails, then you create a very poor relationship between your emails and your audience, right? Where the expectation
agreed.
is, repetitive information. It's like slightly annoying information. It's inbox clutter.
Yep.
But I love this concept, and I haven't heard somebody say it so clearly as you, that retargeting is a very good solution for that kind of reminder layer of communication for your marketing.
Well, and then I think email returns to what I think its primary value is, which is communication, and really, I think longer form content.
Yes.
I mean, for us, like right now, we're investing our time in a newsletter where we're sourcing from all of our association, and newsletters are not a new thing, but sourcing from all of our association the most valuable things the association is doing. And because we're not constantly hitting you with, hey, don't forget to sign up for this, you actually stop and you read all of the really valuable content that the association is producing. Because it's like, oh, I got this one communication from NCA this week. I know that it's not them asking me for something, but giving me something.
Yeah.
And I think it changes the relationship with your brand, and it makes email, at least for us, more relevant again.
Yeah.
And then
I love that. I love that kind of description of the relationship between email and retargeting as marketing channels and how they can be used in more intelligent and effective ways. It's like retargeting is super effective for that kind of reminder layer of communication. It can be used for other things, of course, as well. And email can then kind of like retake its place as the kind of very value first, rich form of communication for your audience, because you have another solution in place now for that reminder layer of communication, which is your retargeting campaigns. I love that.
And what's also really cool about ad retargeting is it's not nearly as invasive. I mean, you are part of content that they've sought themselves, right? They're going to read their email at Yahoo. Suddenly there's this ad on the right-hand side. I guess, at least for me anyway, when a brand shows up in my inbox, and if I didn't opt in, I feel like I'm actually, maybe my impression of the brand has changed a little bit. But if it just shows up as an ad in the corner of a website that I'm already at, it feels softer.
Like an ad's going to be there anyways, right? It's
exactly.
It's just a matter of which ad it is. And if the ad is more relevant to you because it's a retargeting based ad, as opposed to some kind of like cold, targeting ad that has a relevant message and a relevant reminder, then that's all the more kind of well taken by the audience.
I agree.
I'd love to round out the kind of channel mix that you have in place. It sounds like email and retargeting are two key channels for you. Are there any other digital marketing channels that kind of make up your core mix?
So we have invested in basically every channel because we feel like there's somebody in our audience that relies on that source as their source for making decisions. So we invest in telemarketing. We actually have a fairly significant investment in telemarketing. I think we're not doing it in sort of like the same way that maybe most people imagine, which is like very rigid, but instead we approach it like we are your concierge. If you want to register, we're here to help. We will make sure this process is painless for you.
Right.
It doesn't come off as a hard sell in that way. It's just like, we're here. So telemarketing, we do invest in trade publications, obviously email, digital retargeting, and then, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some. We actually, for the group, I mean, we have digital mail or direct mail as part of our historic suite.
Yeah.
But this year we're actually like cutting it entirely. Partly because we don't have a lot of faith that people are where their addresses are in our database. So, but then the last thing that I think is just really central, not only to my philosophy about marketing, but also in terms of like the most effective tools for us, and that is audience self-advocacy. So that is the Ebite platform. Our platform built for our exhibitors to invite their customers to our show, to basically be a testimonial in some ways. You like our brand, you work with our brands. Here's this other brand that we really believe in and we're investing in ourselves. Come and be a part of it, you know? And then also in addition to that, on the actual attendee side, for those people that are our loyalists, getting them to invite people in their network, right? Use the power of trust that you've already built in your audience to bring in more of their friends, more of their like-minded people.
Right. What you're describing is like a Evites or an Invites style program. And I know that, in my opinion, this is one of your kind of marketing superpowers as an organization and you and your team is the effectiveness with which you run your Evite programs. And they go by a lot of different names, but basically what you're describing is giving both your kind of like exhibitors, sponsors, speakers, like maybe your partners, as well as your attendees, giving both of those groups of people the opportunity and the ability to advocate for you and to promote your organization overall or one of your specific programs like an event. And one of the things that we've learned, because we have a product that helps to support this, is that there's a healthy portion of your audience that is very willing to do that for you, provided that you make that easy for them to do. And simply making the act of sharing information about your event easy for your attendees or for your exhibitors and sponsors, you'll immediately get picked up by, a percentage of that base who was willing to do that already and now has just kind of finally been nudged or given the tools to make that easy for them. And I like that you were describing that you have a strategy in place both for the exhibitor and sponsor side of things as well as the attendee side of things. Could you talk about that a little bit more, kind of like the history of that program and how it's developed and improved over the last few years?
Yeah. So I think with any marketing vehicle, you got to have like a concrete plan, right? And I think what was, again, going back to my vision, I knew that advocacy was a really important channel to pursue. And so I really built a strong and detailed strategy around how I would make it successful. This doesn't only apply to Ebites. I think this applies to everything. So for us, really it started with just a simple campaign where we were emailing the manufacturers to make sure that they were aware of this tool that we had that basically just made, their relationship with their customer at the show easier. I don't think we did a whole lot the first year other than just send them a couple of emails. But then the next year, we really, as a way of kind of improving the output of the platform, we started to look at offering incentives. We started increasing a number of emails that we sent manufacturers to remind them of the value of the platform. And then finally, the other thing that we layered on top in year 2 was telemarketing, to actually call up the manufacturers and again, offer the concierge approach of, hey, let us help you. You have questions, right? So those kind of combination of tactics in the first couple of years, I think really just like made the platform blossom.
Yeah.
And then of course, like it really helps when we can offer some financial incentive for the manufacturer to reach out to their customer. Hey, I'm going to save you money on your registration fee. You get this benefit simply by being a partner of mine, you know? And it's just like it's a great thing to facilitate, I think, between our exhibitors and their customers.
Right. And so is there some kind of special offer that you're giving your exhibitors the ability to make to their audience by participating in the Evite program that you've set up for them, basically?
Yeah. So most of what we offer are things that will ultimately enhance their presence at the show or future shows. So like the prize is the number one. The person or the company who invites the most people gets a free 10x10 at the next year's show, or that space added to their.
That's
booth.
Super cool. Yeah. So you run a competition amongst your partners. It's like, hey, everybody is involved in this Ebites program. Here's how to use it. Here's your collateral. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit, because I know that design is, again, back to a marketing superpower. I think that's another one of your marketing superpowers is like super, super high quality design within your marketing. So we'll talk about that a little bit if we can. And then, hey, there's also a competition running. And for the exhibitor partner that sends us the most registrations through this Ebites program, this is the incentive, which is a super compelling one. 10x10 booth. We've heard of other incentive ideas like additional sales passes or exhibitor passes, like to bring additional staff if you would like to. But this one is like, you're really putting your money behind this as a program in giving a 10x10 booth as the first prize.
And the other thing we found really be like, I think our manufacturers do value that prize. I think the other thing that they probably end up valuing a little bit more is that we broadcast who is in the lead. Who the top 3 companies are. And I mean, it's an industry that's competing with itself. So like, people want to be number one in any list, you know? So I think that drives participation a lot.
Yeah. It's like a healthy competitive dynamic. And that also gives you a good reason to send like a weekly email to everybody, because it's your leaderboard update. And by the way, if you haven't got rolling yet, or you want to do this further, here's what you need to get going with your Ebites program. It's kind of brilliant, because there's that permission on a weekly basis or a regular basis to share that leaderboard update. People want to know. They're probably looking forward to that email if they're participating. And then that just drives more and more people to participate further.
Yeah, I mean, I get calls and emails between the updates where people are like, so what's my number right now, you know? So it's exciting. We've actually expanded it beyond just our exhibitor partners. We have other audiences that attend the show, some that are also critical in inviting sort of the most valued audience, the customer, to the show, and that is our broker, the broker part of our industry. We've also created an invite campaign for them and offered similar sort of access and productivity tools as an incentive. We have something called the Diamond Club at our show, where all the VIP retailers go and spend time. And so we, as the number one prize for the brokers, they get to go. They have a certain number of passes where they get to go where the VIP retailers are.
That's awesome.
And that's unbelievable access.
Right.
So
that's awesome. I'd love to talk about the attendee invites program here for just a sec.
Sure.
How is that set up? We've talked about the exhibitor side. That makes a lot of sense. Incentivize it, promote it often, use the phone if you have kind of the capacity on your team to offer kind of like a concierge service around that exhibitor participation in your Ebites program. Hey, can I help get it set up for you? Can I help get it running for you? And then this incentive and competitive element around a leaderboard and a top prize, which kind of facilitates much more regular communication about the program. All of that makes perfect sense, and I can see why that has created a successful outcome for you. But on the attendee side, what are some of the details there? Is there an incentive for for attendees to invite other people in the industry to join? Kind of how is that set up?
So there was a lot of learnings from the way we approached the exhibitors that I think can be applied to the attendees. We are still getting that platform sort of to the same level.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that this year is going to be the year that we elevate it to that level. We have not had incentives in the past for attendees, but we've just made it very easy for them to invite their peers and tried to build marketing materials that explain, hey, if your function is this is why the show is something you have to attend, right? So like right now, a lot of what we're trying to do is just give them the tools that they already desire for trying to advocate for themselves and their organization to go to Sweets and Snacks. But this year, I will be trying to build in some incentives for attendees.
Yeah.
Right now, like we're toying with the idea of just like, raffles and such.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. And one thing I wanted to make sure to touch on was the effectiveness or the impact of high quality design on marketing. This is something that you've mentioned to me the last time that we spoke, and I'd love to get into this for a sec because I've seen the marketing collateral that you put out even just through Feathr for your Ebites program on the exhibitor side or through the ad campaigns, and it is not exaggerating at all here. Some of the best from a design and a graphic quality standpoint of any that I've seen. And so first of all, like kudos, but secondly, of course, that's intentional by you. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit, kind of your perspective on design and its impact on marketing and why for NCA that is such kind of a key intention and key focus for you.
Sure. So first, I want to say to all the copywriters out there, all the people that think that words are the most important thing in the world, keep believing it. I just offer sort of a contrary opinion, and that is not to say that I don't think words are important, because I really do. I think that my philosophy about design comes from a world that's just changing very rapidly. I know that I am bombarded with advertisement constantly. And I think we are right now at this place where we're like all a little bit mistrusting of everything that's being thrown at us. I mean, that's like right? Like if I get an ad in my Facebook feed, it's not like it immediately like I am trusting this ad that's being presented and what they're selling. So a lot of times you don't even get the opportunity to use your brilliant words to convince somebody that you're the right contact, the right business, the right partner for them. As we scan everything in our life, because that's all we're doing is just skimming everything all the time. Right. The things that like stand out are the things that are well organized, that are manicured, well thought out. There's just sort of like an intuition or an instinct we have for like, man, this company has got their act together. I haven't read a single word, but like, and I really do believe that design is the majority of that impression. And I also, I mean, NCA has a lot of brilliant writers, and I know that they will make our writing awesome. But my goal and a lot of what I'm trying to accomplish is just to get your eyeballs to my content, just to get you to give me 3 seconds of consideration. And I think that good design is just essential for that moment of, openness,
That window of opportunity is created by high quality design. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I love your explanation. Maybe we're not as far apart on this as I initially thought. Yeah. Like I'm a big copy guy too. Like I think the difference between, 6 out of 10 copy that was kind of rushed together, and like a 9 out of 10 copy that really had each kind of word and each sentence examined, and all of the headlines were really thought through, and you wrote 6 or 7 headlines and then combined them to make the best one, as opposed to just using the first one that came to mind. I think all of that stuff really makes a difference, and I've seen that some in my career as a marketer. But I actually fully agree with you that high quality design is what gives you that opportunity for somebody to read the words that you've written for them and then to consume your message. Yeah, I fully agree with that. You're not saying that copy is important. You're saying that design is what gives you like the permission basically to communicate via your high quality copy. And if you like put all of that time into this really great copy and then kind of underinvest on the design, then you're not giving people the opportunity to be impacted by the copy that you've taken the time to put together.
So I will try to push, controversy just like a little bit, because that's fun to do, right? So I think in the association world, most of our audiences are relatively small. Mm-hmm. I mean, compared to like what a major brand markets to.
True.
Where there is so much value in constant A/B testing for the huge brand, because they might actually serve 1 million people, right? So like millions of people potentially.
Yeah.
And so the nuance of using a particular word leads to 5%, 3% increase in interaction. That 3% is a lot of people, you know? In the association world, I feel like those benefits are reaped, and it's not it's significant. It doesn't feel as significant to me. I guess like one thing that I think I would say on the copy front, and it specifically relates to long form copy, that like so much of the massaging that we do is not leading to real meaningful changes in outcome. I think,
yeah,
I'm afraid. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's easy to get attracted by that type of marketing where it's like A/B test, 17 headline variations on your homepage and see how that affects your kind of like site visit time or the number of pages per session or that kind of thing, and like make a series of 25 adjustments over 6 months that create, a huge lift in the conversion rate of your website into whether that's, event registrations or virtual event registrations or membership conversions or content consumptions or what have you. But like you're saying, that's really only a valid strategy at high volumes, like when there's a lot of website traffic in this example, to inform those tests. Otherwise, if you're in the low single digits or double digits of monthly traffic, those kinds of optimizations are very unlikely to be worth it compared to something like, for example, building and launching a new resource for your members that is going to drive further value from your organization to your members. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that's the backdrop of all this too, which is like a lot of the decisions we have to make with like awareness of the resources that we have available to us. And so like if I had unlimited resources, copywriting would be a huge component of what I invest my time and energy in. But we're a lean team, so we gotta find ways to spend our energy, most effectively.
Right. Great.
And yeah.
Well, I like this conversation. I think the relationship between copy and design is super critical. And I think that the hierarchy that you described, it's like design gives you the permission to communicate, and then your copy has an impact. Like that's a really nice way to frame it. So Paul, I got a couple closing questions, and we ask these to every guest. I'd love just kind of your quick responses to these questions here. So at this stage in your career, if you had the opportunity to kind of go back and meet yourself and give yourself some advice at the beginning of your career, what would that be?
Oh man, so many things. Stop worrying so much.
Well, why do you say that? Like, what kind of like inspired that thought? Yeah.
Well, look, I don't want to get like too existential, right? Because we're talking about marketing right now. But I think when you start your career, you have a lot of expectation for yourself, and you think the world has a lot of expectation of you. I think as you go along, you realize that people are very inwardly focused on, and that so much of what you spend time worrying about related to the perception of your effectiveness is time that would be much better served actually like applying it to your craft and learning about how to become a better marketer and a better colleague and you know, a better servant to your members, you know. So I think just like placement of energy, hey, you know, like accept that you don't know things and can't accomplish the world in second one. Learn and grow, and there is an opportunity in this world, and NCA has afforded me the opportunity to grow a lot, and they, you know, so I think that we're, you know, less worrying. But then the other thing that I would say, and this is, you know, I believe wholeheartedly in personalization and digital. I thought that like everything we did had to go in the direction of hyper personalization.
Yeah.
Tying it back to, hey, your audience isn't that big, and they've already like, are, you know, dialed into your brand to some extent. You know, don't get too obsessed with the latest trends. You know, don't follow every trend down the path, because you know it doesn't necessarily make sense for your situation, your amount of resources, and all that.
I love that. Like, of course, you know, Feathr is a marketing tech company, and so we believe, and I think it's seen that technology is an important component. Having the right technology is an important component of being successful as a marketer. That being said, that does not mean staying on the bleeding edge of marketing technology and immediately implementing and testing, you know, any new category of marketing technology that comes out. How I kind of think about it is like, there's like something like, you know, old school at one end of the spectrum, and then like bleeding edge technology, testing everything in beta stages as it's coming out. And then like slightly before that is like cutting edge, which is not quite as extreme as that, but you know, pretty close. And then like one step further back is kind of like modern marketing technology is how I describe it. And I think that's kind of the sweet spot. It's like you want to be in the places that are established and that have like got a foothold in the world in terms of, you know, how people communicate and where attention is. But anything beyond that is probably just a distraction and unnecessary. I once wrote an article on LinkedIn and the title was "Master the Fundamentals, Ignore Everything Else." And it was exactly kind of touching on this same point. It's like in any discipline, there's a certain core set of fundamentals that typically don't change very much over time. And marketing is just the same. You think about it like in sports or whatever, like you can see that really clearly with any particular sport. But marketing is just like that too. It's like understand your audience deeply and invest in that depth of understanding on a regular basis. Produce value-focused assets and resources for that audience on a regular basis, and ideally with increasing levels of quality over time. And of course, that's based upon the first step of having a deep understanding of your audience. And then 3, distribute those resources that you've made for your audience in the places where they're paying attention. That's the one that moves the most, right? Because attention digitally is shifting over time somewhat. You know, LinkedIn, for example, now is a much bigger channel for us than it was 3 years ago. But that principle doesn't change of just communicating and distributing what you've made for your audience in the places where they're paying attention. That principle is locked in, but the particular implementations of that may change a little bit over time.
So one thing that I think is also providing me some relief at this point in my career is that now that we've got all these vehicles available to us, marketers everywhere can actually turn back on the content creators and say, the problem here is not that your content isn't being seen, you know? And I feel like there's this sort of refocus on the value of what you're offering that is, I just think, really, really important for an organization, you know? Like you gotta actually look at the product that you're that you are trying to sell as a significant part of the equation. And I actually think businesses and associations probably haven't had to do that much historically. It's like, no, it's the marketer's fault. It's the sales team's fault, you know?
They're not getting the word out properly. But like now you can't hide behind that excuse any longer.
You can't, because like I can actually show you a dashboard, analytics dashboard, and I will show you, I mean, eyeballs are on this. We are being seen. And I will continue to optimize my ability to do that. But, you know, the product also needs constant evaluation.
Yeah.
And investment.
That's such a good point.
So,
Paul, you're a genius.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing point. It's like in the past, the effectiveness of your distribution was much more the variable of your success.
Yep.
Not that the underlying product could be crap. That's not what we're saying. But
right.
if you outperformed your competition in terms of your distribution, right, where you showed up, how effectively you were communicating with your audience, you could win with a lesser product. Just to try to put it in simple terms. But now with that kind of being evened out, typically, right, it's like the digital channels are accessible to everybody. The ease of implementing them and getting going in those digital channels, whether that's, you know, retargeting or that's email or that's social, all of those are very accessible and they're easy to get going with, relatively speaking. That distribution has kind of leveled out. It's not as easy to create a competitive advantage in terms of your distribution strategy as it once was. And so now what you're saying, and I love this, is that there is more importance being placed on the actual underlying quality of what it is you're communicating about, as opposed to just winning by virtue of being a better communicator or being in more channels, because now that's much more easier for everybody to catch up in that side of things.
Well, and really to sort of take that, you know, I think to you know, express that point and more clearly, I mean, right now, I have the ability to place ads next to where some of the largest brands in the world place their ads, right? So like, that has never been afforded to small marketing teams. I mean, that I can occupy a comparable space. It's like, it's pretty unbelievable. And this is just a random point. I don't know that it's necessarily connected. I think it probably connects better with an earlier conversation we had, but, I mean, I think that's just, you know, one more example of why digital retargeting and what Feathr's doing is so valuable to an association marketer. You know, to be able to be served right next to a major brand is only something marketers of this day have been capable of. So cool.
Very well said, Paul. Thank you so much for the time. This conversation has been super fun and interesting. I'd love to stay in touch and fully intend to, just to see how 2021 goes for you. I'm hopeful that you're able to bring your major events back, and maybe towards the middle of the year or the third quarter of the year, we could check in again and see how things are going and maybe bring you on for a round 2 here.
That'd be great. I would love that. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Feathr's amazing. Support Feathr.
I didn't tell him to say that. Awesome, Paul. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. I just want to thank Paul again for joining us today. And if you'd like to get in touch with Paul, you can find him on LinkedIn by searching Paul Kissin. The Association Marketing Show is brought to you by Feathr, the all-in-one digital marketing toolkit built just for associations. Today, more than 800 associations use Feathr to power the digital marketing for all of their key programs, like virtual events, membership campaigns, continuing education, and more. To learn more about our technology and do-it-for-you implementation services, check us out at feathr.co. That's FEATHR.co. And if you've got feedback about the show or would like to join as a guest, shoot us an email at podcast@feathr.co. See you on the next one.